How's it going, everybody? I recently had an opportunity to give a lecture at a Bible conference about learning how to share the gospel in Thai. And I gave a number of practical tips on learning the Thai language. And so I just want to kind of go through this list briefly with you. I titled this the Thai language cheat sheet. So I just want to take the cheat sheet that I put together, that I compiled, and put it into video form. And I do hope it can be of some benefit to all of you. Just kind of bullet points here. And yeah, take them and use them as you will. First thing on here is I encourage people to get a good grasp on the 5 Thai tones. They are integral to learning Thai well. If you cannot pronounce the 5 Thai tones well, you're really going to struggle as you learn how to read and learn how to speak Thai. So nail these 5 tones down well. Get a native speaker to help you so that you can hear them, that they can listen to you and give correction and tips on your pronunciation. Second thing, where possible, focus on memorizing phrases, not just words alone. Obviously, we need to memorize words. It's good to have a dictionary. But the benefit of learning phrases over just words, especially from native speakers, is that if you hear someone use a phrase in a given context, you can have a high level of certainty that that is acceptable Thai, so that really you can just reproduce, in a sense, what they have already said and start using it in various contexts in your own life. Third tip, and these are all kind of just jumbled together, not necessarily in any particular order, is to spend a sufficient amount of time on the foundational areas of Thai before moving on. What I mean by this is basically, if you are laying the foundation of your Thai right now, if you're in the early stages, I'm going to encourage you to have a good level of understanding and certainty on what you're learning before you build on that foundation. So if you feel like you don't really understand a given topic or a consonant, a vowel, or whatever it may be that you're learning, you're going to want to spend more time on that before you start building from there. And I know for all of us, we want to get to speaking Thai as quickly as possible. But if you have a faulty foundation and you start building on that, there's going to be a lot of holes in your Thai later on that you're going to have to come back and correct. So better to spend the time now, spend the time building well now, so that you don't have to come back years down the line and correct some of those mistakes. Another tip is rushing typically doesn't yield good results when it comes to language learning. This is related to what I just said a second ago, but really don't plan on just blazing through Thai and expecting to remember it all. I really do encourage, again, the slow and steady kind of baby step process when it comes to language learning, so that you can have the highest level of fluency possible. The next tip I would encourage is start learning how to read Thai with all the tone rules included as soon as possible. I know a number of people push back on this and maybe would not encourage learning how to read at the beginning, but I would say this is a consistent tip that I've heard from a number of people, is that they would encourage learning how to read from the get-go. So you may not even be living in Thailand, but I still would encourage you to find materials that can help you learn how to read from the very beginning. If I could go back in time, I would start learning Thai maybe up to even 6 months or so. Whenever I decided to move to Thailand, I would start learning Thai right at that point. And I would encourage you to pursue reading as well. Another tip, giving a little time to Thai every day, even if it's only 5 to 10 minutes, is better than giving it none. The consistency is really the key when it comes to language learning. Some people watching this may have hours per day to devote to the Thai language, and that's great if you do, but I understand some people are not in that place in life. And so really what I want to encourage is the consistency of giving it something every single day. Because the longer the gaps are between your spending time on Thai, the more you're going to be prone to forget it, and the harder it is going to be probably to jump back into it once you do. Another tip I would give is practice writing out the alphabet as you're learning it until you can do it all by memory. This is something that helped me early on. As I was learning how to read Thai, I was writing out each of the characters until I got all the way to the end, and then I would just try to write out the entire Thai alphabet by memory. And, I don't do that anymore, but I did that for probably a number of years. And it really just helped solidify things that I'd learned when it came to the Thai alphabet and learning how to read. So I would encourage you in that pursuit. Also, whenever you're reading, try reading out loud as a way of developing your pronunciation. It's easy just to mind read and just keep to yourself, but especially when it comes to a foreign language like Thai, it's going to be really beneficial for you to be saying what you're reading as you're reading it. Not just thinking it, not just understanding it in your mind, but practicing, because your mouth itself needs practice, and putting all these different sounds and the way that you have to move your mouth around and all these things, you're going to need all the time you can get on practicing different tones and pronunciations, vowels, all these things. So when you read, even when you're alone, I would encourage you to read out loud. Another tip is reviewing helps solidify what you've learned, and one time through usually isn't enough. And I know that for a lot of us, review kind of feels like a wasted time. But if you just go through something once, you may or may not be able to retain that or remember that. For a lot of us, we can't retain something after just learning it once. And so that review process can actually solidify and develop your understanding of something that you learned previously. So although it may feel like you're slowing down, It's kind of that tortoise and the hare thing. It may feel like you're slowing down, but ultimately, again, you are building up a deeper and better understanding. So that way you can use that word or that phrase or that letter, whatever it may be, more accurately in the future. Also, take concrete steps to implement new words and phrases into real life situations. This may feel a bit forced or mechanical, but it may not be a bad idea for you to just take a phrase. Maybe let's just say you learn a new phrase about how to ask a waitress for water or something like that. You want to take that phrase and go, okay, next time I go to the restaurant or next time I go to this shop, I'm going to ask them for water, a bottle of water. I'm going to ask for this thing or that thing. So what you're basically doing is making a plan to implement things that you're learning in real time. And so it's not just going to stay in the theoretical. You're actually strategizing, how can I work this in daily conversations? How can I find an excuse, if you will, although it's not an excuse, but really looking for an opportunity to use what you're learning in real time. That's, again, going to help that process of solidifying what you're learning. Also, write down or type out Thai words and phrases that you hear natives using day to day. This is something that I would say helped me a good bit early on when I would just hear, and actually I still do this on some level. When you hear native Thai speakers saying different things, so they're talking on the phone or they're ordering food, or they're saying, using phrases or words that you're not familiar with, do your best to jot it down or write it down, type it out on your phone or something like that. And maybe, again, you don't know how to spell it or you couldn't fully make it out, but do your best. And then maybe you can go back and check with a native Thai speaker, maybe a friend in the future. You're going to go through and review those things and maybe look for opportunities that you can use those if it's applicable to situations that you're in. The point here is that what native speakers are saying, you can have quite a high level of confidence that is acceptable Thai. And so that's the goal here, is to copy and imitate native speakers as much as we can. Another tip I would suggest is using transliteration only as long as necessary before switching over to the Thai script. Obviously, when we first start out, some of us maybe need the transliteration on some level. Most of us probably do. But I would say use it only as long as is necessary, because you want to switch over to the Thai script as soon as possible. You don't want to be using transliteration as a crutch, years into your Thai learning, if possible. So I would say even maybe in the first, if you can get rid of it within the first year or maybe even the first 6 months, that's going to be helpful. That's going to strengthen your Thai, your understanding of the Thai characters. Okay, another one. I got this tip from Brett from Learn Thai from a White Guy, who helped me a number of years ago. He encouraged me to identify holes in my Thai and then find ways to fill in those gaps or fill in those holes. And so I think I covered this a little bit earlier about having holes in your Thai if you don't spend enough time on foundation. But I think the reality is, for most of us, we're going to have these holes in our Thai regardless of how well we can speak Thai if we're not native speakers. And so I think it's going to be wise for us to identify, as Brett said, these are the ways that I'm weak. These are the areas that need sharpening. These are these different things that I don't fully understand yet, even though I may have progressed in other areas. And so you want to really make a game plan of how can I attack, maybe let's just say, for instance, whenever I talk about politics or whenever I talk about this certain topic, something geography or something like that, you're like, I don't even know what to say. I just kind of go blank in that context. If that's the case, you got to say, okay, well, I need to really make a plan of how to attack those things. I'm going to start focusing on this kind of vocabulary. I'm going to start, watching documentaries about geography or whatever it may be, listen to political debates, things like that. And then you can kind of baby step your way through attacking and filling in those holes so that you can grow in those areas. Also, stepping out and trying to speak Thai, even imperfectly, is a part of the growth process. And related to this, I would say, don't count on learning Thai alone in a closet perfectly before attempting to speak. A lot of the Thai language learning process is about stepping out. And so some of us are going to be more bold than others. Some of us, just personality-wise, maybe we're more extroverted. We like to be, out and about and around people, and maybe there's less fear there, where some of us are going to be more timid. But regardless of our temperament or personality type, stepping out and actually just trying and failing and feeling like you're a 2-year-old is really a part of this process. I think sometimes we think, I'm going to learn it perfectly just by myself and then kind of come out speaking Thai. And I'm sure there are some, language learners among us who are more gifted and can maybe do that. Maybe, polyglots or those who have more experience in language. But I think for the most part, most of us who are probably more average language learners are going to need to be out speaking with people, this trial and error process, trying to say things that we, thought up, and then we find out, okay, that's not right, got to make adjustments. But one thing that you may not even perceive as you're failing is that those things are going to help you get better. I mean, there have been times where, someone corrects me and saying something I said wrong, And those tend to be the times that you're like, man, I'm never going to forget that because, I tried it, I failed, they corrected me, I made adjustments. Okay, good, got it. So I'm going to encourage you, step out, speak, and just know that there's a lot of failure. Don't be surprised by that. Don't be discouraged by that. It happens to all of us. Okay, next, just a couple more here. Anything done right, this is related to my last point. Anything done right will be done wrong first. The road to fluency is filled with mistakes. Again, I did share a little bit about that already. But again, you got to do it wrong before you're going to do it right. So just learn to be okay with that. Another thing is a lack of output can at times be traced to a lack of input. Keep filling up with tithe. So what I mean here is that, sometimes for me, and I have noticed sometimes when I feel like I'm just empty, my mind is just empty, my brain is just empty of tithe, and I don't know what to say, I find sometimes that can probably be linked to a lack of input or a lack of taking on tithe, digesting tithe, studying tithe. And so sometimes that connection is such that, when I'm not actively pouring myself into tithe, learning new words, getting in new situations, watching videos, whatever it may be, those are probably going to be times that I'm more dry on tithe. And I kind of just revert to, phrases that I've always used. I don't feel fresh. I don't feel like there's a lot of kind of new vocabulary, new phrases, new creativity there. And so again, you always want to be pouring in with more and more tithe in order to be able to put out a lot of new tithe. So there's ultimately no silver bullet to learning the Thai language. It's going to come with blood, sweat, and tears. And I did share this with some of you in a video I did a number of years ago. But this is what I encourage my friends who came to the lecture that I did at this recent conference. I said, look to the Lord for wisdom and understanding and pursue Thai diligently and consistently. Again, I made this originally for those who are missionaries in Thailand, those who are learning to share the gospel with Thai people. And ultimately, I believe that it is from the Lord, the creator of heaven and earth, that wisdom and understanding come. And so this doesn't negate the need to study diligently and consistently. But at the end of the day, I acknowledge that I don't have it in myself to learn Thai in and of myself. I need the Lord's help. I need wisdom. I need understanding ultimately to do anything, because apart from Christ, I can't do anything. So I hope you have found these encouragements, this Thai language cheat sheet helpful. I don't know if I've mentioned this in a previous video or not, but if you are looking for helpful resources to pick up, Paibun Publishing's 3-way Thai English dictionary was one that I used early on. Helpful dictionary. I would recommend it. I think they still sell it in some Asia Books stores if you're in Thailand. And then also I want to say they converted that book, it seems, that dictionary, into what's called a Talking Thai app. It's $24.99 US on the App Store. That's another option as well. They do have native speakers, I believe, doing the pronunciation on there. So that actually is an added bonus. And then if you're wanting to learn how to read Thai, Learn Thai for Beginners by Benjawan Pumsan Becker is a helpful resource. That's how I learned how to read Thai. And then lastly, one that I used early on was called Learn Thai Podcast. It's learn-thai-podcast.com, and they have a $99 lifetime subscription. So those are just a couple of resources that I used early on. And I just want to share these tips with you that hopefully can assist you in your Thai language learning. And I'll see you in the next video. God bless.